What comes to your mind when you hear the word Viking? This, this, or this? Due to History Channel's popular documentative production Vikings, these Norsemen regained their popularity and finally managed to flee from the dusty pages of history. These sailor warriors of the Scandinavia, which were referred to as sea wolves by the people of the places they have colonized, were associated with various concepts. The multiple connotations we have about these people are due to their invasive nature. Their actions were the kind that changes the flow of time. They were very influential in especially European history. Now we will learn about these Scandinavian men, their culture, and their game-changer one-of-a-kind traits.
Who were these Vikings? Due to the harsh conditions of Scandinavia, not many relics survive regarding the Viking era, so the contemporary sources are particularly scanty and moreover not always reliable. However, we can investigate their way of living in the aspects of political structure and occupations. The Vikings were comprised of three social classes. The highest class consisted of the king, which was chosen by chiefs. The king was called Primus inter pares, in other words, the first among his equals. After the king there were jarlar, who were sufficiently wealthy and landowners, also obtaining ships. It was almost impossible for kings to act independently from or in opposition to the assembly of chieftains. In early times, Vikings were accommodated in loose clans, so the kings were chosen by nominated by other chieftains. The enforcement of the law was the responsibility of Thing, which is a council comprised of free men. It had the ability to pronounce judgment. The laws, interestingly, was customary. It held down from generation to generation orally. There were two other social classes amongst the Viking, which were the peasants and the thrall. The peasant was the backbone of the Viking society. There were freemen with small holdings, which at the same time fought battles, in wars, and in peacetime worked as smiths, settlers, and so on. In both upper classes, in other words, earls and the peasants, women were enjoying full freedom and they were highly respected. The last class of the Vikings was the thrall, who was a little more than slaves. Their primary activities for living were hunting, fishing, agriculture, cattle breeding, and trading. All five of these occupations were often simultaneously pursued. The precise regions that were cultivated are not known directly. What is known is the practice of agriculture was closely connected with fertility beliefs and rites. One of the most important crops during the Viking period was rye, followed by barley and oats. They are known to have domestic animals such as horses, ox, sheep, goat, and pig, and also the duck and the cat. Additionally, one of the rare known methods of Vikings of gaining livelihood was commerce. The commodities exported the most were furs and slaves. Most of the slaves were women, presumably the members of the thrall class. The Vikings' members' behavior and their general code of conduct were in accordance with the sayings of the High One, which was Odin. In a highly celebrated poem, Hamel, we can observe the embodiment in the wisdom of Odin. Vikings gave the utmost importance to this poem and lived accordingly to it. The Vikings were careful and active. They were using their time efficiently because they were aware that it was their legacy that would remain after them. So they worked really hard to keep a good reputation among their counterparts. They were very hospitable and polite. The Vikings were advised by gods to learn from their experiences and be smart and wise, but not arrogant, cherish friendships, and encourage cooperation. They were very strict about not to exceed limits from drinking to loving. They were very moderate. This shows that they were not as barbaric as they are often believed to be in their out-of-battlefield life.
The Vikings were considered pagan since their rituals and beliefs were closely associated with nature. Nordic religion, similar to the many other religions of the time, was polytheistic. There were numerous gods, each governing a particular human need and action. In this hierarchy, gods were considerably in power and status. There were two races of gods according to the Nordic religion, the Aesir and the Vanir. Odin was the supreme amongst gods. He was known for his passion for wisdom. He used to sit heavily with one eye in pursuit of knowledge. The warriors who died on the battlefield were believed to be joining him at Valhalla. Thor was the god of the common man. He was believed to be temperamental, but easily pacified. The Vikings peasant understood and appreciated him. He was most commonly presented with his hammer. The figure of Balder is unique in Norse mythology and an enigma, which scholars have not yet solved. He was the favorite of the gods. Most legends about him concern is that Icelandic stories tell how the gods amused themselves by throwing objects at him. Knowing that he was immune for harm, the blind god Hod, deceived by the evil Loki, killed Balder by hurling mistletoe, the only thing that could hurt him. Heimdall is the god with the war horn, which sounds at Ragnarok. The Applekites, according to Norse religion, he is also the one friend of the gods and the bridge brothers. Ul is the god of hunting and he is mastered in archery. The one is sometimes referred to as the ancient race of gods. Vanir consists of three gods, which are Njord, Frey, Freya. Njord was one of the most worshipped gods among the Vikings due to the fact that he was ruler of winds and god of the sacrificing people. Most Vikings were hermits during summer and sailors during winter. Frey was the god of sexual intercourse and Freya was his female counterpart. She was referred to as the goddess of love and fertility. Being half good, half devil, Loki was the strangest amongst the Viking gods. He is the offspring of a giant and in many ways of a split personality. Norse religion and stories it consists shaped around the battle between the gods led by Odin and giants led by Vatrundish. Giants and gods were traditional enemies in Norse mythology, and that is what makes the god Loki a very unique figure. A very distinct characteristic of the Norse religion was that they were sacrificing humans as well as the other species. There was a festival in every 9 years in a place called Old Uppsala, which was referred to as the center of Norse paganism. Attendance at this festival was compulsory. The temple was fully covered with gold, and there were 3 sculptures belonging to the Thor, Odin, and Frey. Thor was believed to be rule year, e.a. rain and fine weather that were needed for the agricultural activities. Odin was the god encouragement to fight. Lastly, Frey was worshipped for the peace and sensuous pleasures he gave to mankind. During the festival, 9 males of each species, including humans, were sacrificed to please the gods. If the people were threatened by famine or sickness, they will dedicate the sacrifice to Thor. If they are threatened by war to Odin, and if a union were to blessed a marriage, the sacrifice was dedicated to Frey. After they had conquered Europe, the Vikings gradually converted into Christianity. Olaf Tryggvason was one of the key figures in the process in which the Norse turned their backs to the ancient gods.
In the Viking period, the Scandinavian countries, i.e., Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, have possessed a practically never-ending surplus of manpower and leaders of ability who could organize groups of warriors into conquering bands and armies were seldom lacking. Their burning, plundering, and killing earned them the name Viking, meaning pirate, in the early Scandinavian languages. However, Norse people thought very differently about raiding and theft. The theft was a sickening act and was one of the few acts that would condemn a man to a place of torment. On the other hand, raiding was an honorable challenge to a fight, with the victor maintaining all of the prizes. Raiding increased a man's social status in Viking society. A successful raider returned home with wealth and fame, the 2 most important qualities that a man needs to climb up on the social ladder. Raiding was a desirable occupation for a young man, although an older man was expected to settle down and raise a family. Most probably, that's why most of the raids were carried out by lesser chieftains rather than by kings and earls. The Norse religion was one of the key factors that encouraged young men and women to raid, because for most people, there is no life after death. Since there was no afterlife, the only thing that survived after that was one's reputation. Norsemen risked everything to gain and protect their good name. The Norse also believed that the time of one's death is determined by fate and is chosen by the Norns at the time of one's birth. Therefore, nothing one did could change the moment of one's death. However, what one did up until that moment was one's own doing. Since the time of one's own death were predestined anyway, there was nothing to lose and everything to gain by being bold and adventurous. The greatest test of a man was to fight to the bitter, and even in the face of certain defeat and death. Norsemen expected a share of trouble, and the best of them attempted to use it and to rise above it, creating fame for themselves through bravery, loyalty, and generosity. Although it has not been clarified what triggered this outward movement towards Europe, there are several reasons that come from. First is the overpopulation. Due to the common practice of polygamy amongst Vikings, before the Viking Age, Scandinavia was not sufficient enough to feed all the population. The young men were willingly exiled outside Scandinavia due to religious manipulations. Another reason was the internal dissensions. The laws of succession was not strict and every new king was open to challenge. Therefore, those who wished to become the ruler went on seeking alliances or wealth to overthrow the existing king. One of the most important incentives that led Vikings to Europe was the mercantile conditions. The opportunities to control the trade routes was seen as a guarantee of a long-term wealth. The pursuit of it was one of the key elements that enhanced the Viking piracy. Also, the climatic disasters, which made it impossible to live a consistent life, were one of the reasons why the Vikings were raiding. The raid at Lindisfarne was not the first Viking attack into the British Isles. However, the attack on Lindisfarne in 1793 was the first recorded Viking raid in England and in Europe more broadly, and it is often cited as the beginning of the Viking Age in Europe. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicles 1793 entry is written that, in this year, terrible portents appeared over Northumbria, and miserably frightened the inhabitants. These were exceptional high winds and flashes of lightning, and very few dragons were seen flying in the air. A great famine followed these signs, and a little after that in the same year, on 8th January, the harrying of the heathen miserably destroyed God's church in Lindisfarne by rapine and slaughter. While the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle indicates that the raid occurred in January, it's now generally accepted that actual date was June 8th. The given date probably represents a scribal error. Also, in this recording, other medieval resources that the pagan invaders laid everything waste with grievous plundering, trampled the holy places with polluted steps, dug up the altars, and seized all the treasures of the Holy Church. The event was terrorizing to English because the Christian sanctuary was vandalized by pagan people. It was Lindisfarne's importance for Christians that made the raid such a crisis, because its monastery held the relics of Saint Cuthbert, a healing in his day, and after his death many miracles were reported at the site of his shrine, which made the island a popular destination for the faithful. As the monastery grew in importance, it also grew in power and wealth, receiving gifts from royal figures and grants of the land. By the time of the raid, it held a great number of precious ceremonial objects. So, in attacking the island of Lindisfarne, the Vikings were striking at the heart of Anglo-Saxon Christianity.